Hey everyone, welcome back to the arena. I'm MD, joined here by Covey, and once again, a really fun and awesome guest that we can't wait to get into. But before the conversation, love and appreciation to those who continue to follow us and show the same, as well as those that we continue to reach out to and get in front of.
What's up, guys? So, as MD said, we've got another awesome guest here. We have Alex Bennett with us today. I'll try to give my best introduction to Alex, and then I'll let her give a more proper one. But Alex is a social media influencer, most recently worked at Barstool Sports, and co-hosts one of the largest podcasts, Mean Girl Pod, which I would describe as a raw and real, very real podcast on relationships, sex, life in general, and everything in between. But without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Alex. Alex, why don't you just provide a background, like who is Alex Bennett, how you got to where you are today?
Well, thank you guys for having me. Alex Bennett is just a girl who was born and raised in Oklahoma, and I always had a traditional life. You know, I went to college. I played volleyball in high school, went to college at the University of Oklahoma. After that, moved to Orange County, California, then LA. I had marketing jobs, worked for an interior designer. And then when COVID hit, I started making TikToks of my mom, who's just like your sweet, loving, suburban housewife of a mom in Oklahoma. And those TikToks would go viral, and that's what led me to Barstool. Once I got to Barstool, I got in a little tiff, so to speak, with Dave and my now co-host Jordan, which led us to Mean Girl Pod. And then Monday hit, and now I don't work at Barstool anymore, so if there's one thing I've learned, it's that I just never know what's coming next, and I like that about life, and I welcome that, and it's full of surprises, and that's also a big part of who I am, is just somebody that's like, okay, this is what we're doing.
Well, yeah, so the story sounds like it was like, so then this thing came up, and then I went in this direction, and then this thing came up, and I went in that direction. Was there, maybe from your California days, like, was there a set plan or a goal or a vision in your mind that you kept as a North Star, or were you more of like, as things come to me, I'm just going to play maybe more reactive to it?
My North Star has always been, and I think will always be, work hard. Like, we always joke, after my honeymoon, I was sitting in the airport with my husband, Graham, and I was making business plans, and I was like, these are all the things I want to do in life. And I've always said I get fulfillment out of working and pushing myself and being challenged. A lot of times I fail, and I'm really not afraid of that, almost to a detriment. So my North Star is challenging myself and working, no matter what that means. And I don't have like a goal of where I want to go. I just know I want to go somewhere, and I want to be pretty busy. And I want that work to mean something to me. And if I'm doing that, then I'm good.
So you mentioned being okay with failure. And I think a lot of people growing up, myself included, have always looked at failure as a bad thing and like something that I'm fearful of doing, or I used to be fearful of doing a lot of things with the anticipation of potentially failing at it. And I just wonder, like, from your perspective, where did that come from, that ability to be so fearless, maybe at an early stage? Was that just instilled in you from a young age? Did you start to develop that as you got older? Like, where did that welcoming of failure come from?
I had to learn it, and I learned it through this feeling almost of anger. It was like right beside anger, and it was just uncomfortable. And growing up in Oklahoma, everyone knew everyone. And in college, like, you know, you'd be like, oh my God, it's my dad's best friend's daughter. And everyone had these opinions, and it was so small knit, and I remember feeling kind of trapped by that. So when I moved to California, I was like, there's all these things I want to do, and I was always afraid to do them because I was always, I would feel kind of weird doing them in Oklahoma. Whether or not that was true is just how I felt. And I remember when I first started making videos on Instagram, people would unfollow me. Like, I had 10,000 followers, then I had like 9,500. And I was like, what's going on? Like, I'm doing something I love, but people aren't liking it. And I remember my husband, Graham, downloaded the app of like who unfollowed you. And he would look at it on my phone, and he'd be like, oh my God. And it was just like a lot of people that I knew, like my friend, like my second, third circle friends. And it hurt, like those people hurt to me way worse than like a troll on the internet. And I remember sitting there in that time being like, okay, I'm either going to have to get over fear and what people think of me, or I can succumb to it and go live on the safe side. And that was really the first time where I was like, no, I'm going to go for it. And ever since then, I've kind of been like, the fear of not doing it's always been way worse than the fear of doing it. And I just live by that. Like, that's how I gauge everything. I'm like, would you rather not, or would you rather let them win? And I'm always like, no, I'd rather try it. I don't really care. And that fuels me.
No,
you're smiling. This is your topic.
Because it is my topic. But no, I think about that. Well, one, I have followed. I have done the same thing with the Instagram. I have done that like unfollowing app, and I'm like, oh, you unfollow me? That's so odd. Like, I wonder what I said. But then that long gone. But anyway, no, I think about that quote of like the feeling of regret is so much more painful than being rejected, and actually, but doing it. And I always, this is a terrible example for it, but it's always the first one that comes to my head is like, because some of my friends like come to me with it. It's like when you see a cute girl at the gym, and it's like, I keep seeing them and I keep wanting to go up to them and just say hi, and you end up not doing it, and then you leave or they leave and you're like, oh, I wish I would have done it. Like, and so eventually you do it, and even if I have gotten rejected, but like I still feel good about it because at least I tried, and I know I'm respectful and I do it with good intention. And if the answer is no, the answer is no, but at least you know the answer. And so I really relate with that. Did you want to add something there?
Well, just a question, you've moved on from it and you've carried forward, but did you ever look back to rationalize why they've unfollowed you? Do you have like a thought process as to like how you maybe just group them in and be like, oh, they're just this, or this is why I must be getting unfollowed, just for your own peace of mind?
Well, okay, so in that scenario, it was so great because the day I got hired back when I got hired to Barstool, I think every single one of them came back because they were overwhelming majority of them were guys, and I was just sitting there and I was like, welcome back to all my college friends. But I have a new gauge on it. So when we started Mean Girl Pod, we talked about these topics that weren't your average dinner table topics in Oklahoma, especially. And so a lot of people that I knew had an opinion on that, right? And my dad used to always say, when you look in the mirror, you gotta know who's looking back at you. And there was a point there where even some of my family members were like, these things you're talking about your sex life, everyone can hear it, like, you got an OnlyFans, like, come on, Alex. And that was a point where I said, okay, I'll check myself here, see if there's, like, I'll hear you out. I'm like a skeptic. I'm a little bit of a skeptic, but I'm also an optimist. So I sort of say, all right, I'll take in what you're saying and I'll kick it around and I'll see if it fits with my value system, or if it fits with the value system that my parents gave me. Like, I got to make my own, but I take a lot from what they taught me. So, for instance, some of the topics, I'm like, those are really ones that I'm feeling, and I love when we share these topics out loud, and then in the DMs, people are like, that really resonated with me. I can't talk to my friends about that, but you said exactly how I feel. That makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I have purpose. If I was getting on there and I was being like, kind of like mean about somebody or like judgmental, I don't think I'd be able to sleep at night. So my gauge is like, is it true to who I am? If it is, I'm cool to keep going and I don't care what they thought. But if I'm like, I'm the first to be like, no, I was a little out of line there. Like, I would have unfollowed me too, and like that kind of hurts, and I have to live with that and pivot. So I'm not too prideful to be like, F everybody. It's like, I will take it into account, but I've gotten really good at saying, I used to say if my mom or somebody would call me and be like, I don't think that's good, I'd be like, you're right, it's not good. But now I kind of say, let me see, and then I'm good with moving forward according to my values.
So that makes me think about, like, what have you learned about yourself since you've kind of become more of a public figure? Have you learned more about like what you really value? Like, what have you just learned about yourself? Because for me, I feel like I can feel the sense of security that you have in who you are right now as it relates to what you're posting, and know you're doing it for a higher purpose, or because there's people that are going to benefit from it relative to something else like judgment, where you said like, this is not going to benefit, this is actually promoting maybe hate and negativity rather than positivity and support, etc. So like, what have you just learned about Alex Bennett, throughout this journey, if you will?
Well, the first thing I've learned is I'm a lot tougher than I thought I was tough. But you kind of get in some of these comment sections, and I'm like, oh, that's wow, that's what you want me to do to myself, okay? And I feel like I've been called so many different things, and it's refreshing to know that I care about the people whose phone number are in my phone, for the most part. But the people on the internet, it's like a relief to know I don't mind what they think. In fact, I would rather them hate me or love me, but not feel indifference. And I mean that to my core. So I think that's I'm glad I'm the one out there fighting the battle. Like, somebody texted me today and said, how do you handle the hate comments? And I'm like, I'd rather it be me than you, because maybe it was because I had an older brother with a bunch of guys around, but I can handle those comments. And so with that, I know if I put my best foot forward on social media, then I'm really happy and I feel a sense of fulfillment. And I've also learned, if I'm doing something that makes other people feel good, I feel a lot better if I can attach it to a purpose, as opposed to just aimlessly. I'll make a bunch of drink content, and I'm struggling with that right now. I'll do these mixed drinks. And I'm asking myself every day, I'm not so sure who that's for or what that means. And so that's I've learned my body will start to boil up, and I'll have a physical reaction to things if I don't feel like I'm being myself. And so I always tell my parents, social media is one of my favorite tools, as ironic as it is, because it teaches me really who I am and who I want to be, and mainly who I'm not. And so it's I don't know the answer to that yet. I just know I'm trying to find it.
So you mentioned the comment threads, especially with the Mean Girl Pod, and I've seen those comment threads. I've not been one to post in them, rest assured, but I have read that and them, and I do understand the level of hatred that you're subjected to, and I think because you're not responding to all of them and you're not as present in those threads, and there's hundreds of those comments per post, just for the people of the internet to think are you reading those comments, or do you maybe set boundaries and say, I'm only going to limit myself to 2 comments. I'm going to not be nosy, because I personally, at that level, would be way too curious. But I'm always wondering, what are some of your methods beyond just being tough? Do you read those comments?
I haven't read a Mean Girl. There. If I'm in a real silly mood and I'm with Jordan, we'll read them, and we're doubled over laughing. You don't. One of my coworkers, Casey Smith, told me the first week I started at Barstool, Brandon Walker said, rule number 1, never get on Reddit. That's still true to this day. And then Casey told me, she said, think about it this way. You don't have somebody's phone number in your phone. You didn't go to a date party or go on a date with a guy that's sitting there in your comment section commenting some of these things. You don't know them. And if I was scrolling through the comments and I saw somebody I knew, I'd be no, you took the time to type that. So I don't go in there anymore, because I'm what on earth is the point? And there are some days though where I truly find them hilarious, but boundary wise, on my personal account, I'll read some every now and then. But on the Mean Girl ones, I'm just you could never. I just want to comment back to those people. I'm you wouldn't last a day in that comment section. And you're welcome, because you're still here. And I checked, you follow all 3 of us, so we're good.
So I want to pivot a little bit. I get but what has you've kind of talked about your journey with mental health, but I'm just curious, have you had any experience with therapy? If so, how has your experience been? What has it taught you? I'm a huge proponent, not obvious to you, but obvious to our listeners. It's been a transformative experience for me. So, and if you haven't, what has been what is your outlook on therapy? What is your viewpoint? Just give us kind of your overall impact on how you view mental health and kind of your experience with it.
So I view mental health as something that I neglected until I was 25 maybe, and then started having paralyzing panic attacks and anxiety. And I call it a good thing, because I think energy can be reconfigured, not destroyed in our bodies, right? So now I call myself a big student of the game. So there's weeks where Alex is going to 3 therapy sessions a day. I just got back, actually. I took a mental health 2 weeks back, maybe 3 weeks ago, where I was off the grid, and I was in Tucson. And I think if I can protect between here is what I call it, then I'm such a better person. And I've learned about myself with therapy, I have to play offense, not defense. Like, if I'm already in the trenches and then I start trying to get through the trenches, that's fine, but it's a lot better for me to stay on top of it every day. I'm an avid journaler, like 3-4 pages a day. I'll do different types of journaling. It's made me a lot kinder of a person. Therapy makes me, I don't want to live a life without therapy, or journaling or any of those tools, because it's the one thing, mental health, and I call it spiritual, like awakening, spiritual wellness, for me is like the only way I get to know my true self.
And you mentioned your toughness and growing up with a brother, always around guys. Not to stereotype, but I can't imagine therapy and Oklahoma go hand in hand necessarily. Like, there's probably more of that, like, pull yourself up by the bootstraps mentality. And I'm just wondering, like, how you reconcile your upbringing and maybe old school thinking of what toughness is to what your new school, like, thinking has become in terms of, like, how you now define toughness.
That's a great question. So, yeah, growing up, I always thought therapy meant something was wrong with you. And I think I thought it up until, because I used to, when somebody would say, I got to go see my therapist, I would be like, oh, I wonder, like, what's wrong with them that they have to do that. And I think oftentimes the only thing that's wrong with us is the thought that something is wrong with us. And I had to reconcile it because, no, you know what it was? People around me normalized it. When I moved out to LA, I had a friend who would talk to me about therapy so normal, and she would just work it into her everyday conversation, and she really broke down that barrier for me. And I think she walked me to the water, and then one day I was like, I think I would like to drink from that well. And then I recommended it to my husband, and I was like, hey, I think you should do therapy. I think I should do therapy. I think we should all do therapy. And I remember he looked at me and he was like, I'm insulted. And we laugh about it today. Because, you get 5 years down the road and you're like, I see the impact it had on me. And it's like with anything, when somebody tells you to try something new, but in your mind you have a stigma with it, and then you try it and you're like, oh, I don't even remember that. I remember the first time I told my dad, my therapist said, and he was like, you're what? Did what? And I was like, I have a therapist. And he was like, that's great. Like, I just never even thought about the idea that you could have it. So I think the way I reconciled it was, I don't even think I thought about it. I think I probably went numb and then just said we're going to do it. And I found it so beneficial that I just kept going through it. But now my idea of tough is not warrior tough. It's humility, and being able to show up and say whatever works for me and whatever's best for me is tough. Sometimes the toughest choices are the ones that are best for you, and they're not popular for everybody else. They're not popular from maybe where you're from, but I've learned that a lot this year. I call 2023 my year of tough choices, but right choices. And so I think toughness looks different for a lot of people, but strength can often look sweet and kind, and I think I'm more attracted to that kind of strength.
So well, first of all, whoever your friend is, I love what she was doing as it relates to just talking about it normally. Like, I do that now, and at first it was a little bit uncomfortable for me, but I'm like, if I'm going to normalize this, or try to, at least among my circle or people around me or that interact with me. I remember I started talking to someone a little more intimately for a couple months, and like, she would ask what I was doing on Thursday or something. I was like, well, I'm doing this, and then I'm doing this, and I'm going to therapy, and then I'm doing this. Like, I'm trying to, when I talk to my buddies or my roommates, it's like, they're like, oh, where are you going? You're going downstairs? I'm like, yeah, I got therapy. And because I can just feel, you can almost feel a little bit of a sense of not judgment, but just like, oh, but now that I continue to do it, it's like, oh, you're just going to therapy. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. I can see that. So I think it's just, for anyone listening, like, if you're comfortable going to therapy, just like talk about it. If it's part of your daily routine, don't be afraid. Whatever, if you're doing it that day, don't be afraid to say you're doing it. Like, I'm proud that I do it. I'm proud of the progress that I've made through it. And so I think that that's such a good way to promote just the idea.
Can I? Yeah, I mean,
go ahead. And
yeah, like I just think about sales, and that's the field I'm working in, and it's brilliant because you can, and I know we've tried this and it didn't work on me, but you can't tell people what to do. You know, it's hard to say, oh, go to therapy, or you should go to therapy, and people will probably be less receptive to that just for the sake of not doing what you're telling them to do versus actually evaluating or assessing that to be the right thing to do. And you know, a sales tactic would be to just create FOMO. And I think it's actually worked on myself where now I'm just so curious. Like you said, I want to learn. I want to be a student of this game. I'm personally going to undertake therapy for the sake of just curiosity and wanting to learn more about it because of how normalized and how frequent it's been a topic of conversation, mainly from Matt, versus Matt saying, hey, you should go to therapy or try therapy out. And it's been more of just like, this is what I learned today from my session. And I'm like, well, damn, like, I don't want somebody learning more than me, and I want to know more about this, and I want to know more about myself. So if you're listening and you want to help a friend get to that next level, I think Alex and her friend have the playbook right here. It's just talk about it like you talk about going to the gym and working on your physical fitness.
Yeah, Alex, I just want to say I've been trying to get those words out of him for the last 7 months since we started this podcast. So we're making, you see the progress that's being made here.
I've never been opposed to it, but yes, I've now started to prioritize it a little bit more, but because of the FOMO effect.
And Alex, did you have like a stigma associated with therapy at all? I think you mentioned you did, but when you started, like I know for me, one of the misconceptions I had, maybe the question is more around misconceptions, but like I thought once I started that it was like, okay, I'm signing up, like I'm gonna get better like immediately. And what I realized is like therapy is hard work, like months and years of hard work. So, and it's never ending. Like these are all different things that I didn't know when I started. Was there anything similar to that for you? Any misconceptions you had that maybe proved out to not be, correct?
Well, at first I thought it was going to be this like really emotional, I'm going to be sitting there on the couch crying type moment. And then my therapist said, when on the first session I went to, she was like, okay, you know the whole thing about therapy, right? And I was like, no, what is it? And she was like, well, the first 4 sessions really suck because I'm going to open up all those wounds and they're going to get a little bit worse. And then I was like who's going to want to keep coming back for that? And then she said something to me that was like incredible. She was like, all right, have you ever done anything like really hard? And I was like, maybe. Like, I don't know what you define by hard. And I equate this to my boxing match. Like, I did an amateur boxing match. And it's like, if somebody told you it'll be the best thing you've ever done, but it's going to be hard as hell, are you still going to go? And I'm like, most of the time, I'd like to say the answer is yes. But with therapy in the beginning, it was like, you're going to feel everything. And you have to keep going because you know the benefits are going to be so good afterwards. And like if you ask me the top 3 biggest impacts something's had on my life, therapy's one of them. And so it's like that, my biggest misconception was like I'd be crying or everything would be fixed. And it's like it took a little bit, but the payoff was so worth it.
And question on that, like it's the way you first described it is like you went into it more so curious, less than, I have this distinct problem that I want to heal from. And I think everybody starts their journey there a little bit differently. But like, talk to us about like, did you start with a specific problem in mind, and then also talk about like the amount of problems that then came up when, like wounds that you didn't even know about, let's say, that you had maybe buried away that your therapist was able to help identify for you. Like, talk about maybe the volume of different wounds, if you will, that you discovered, but also went in for healing.
Okay, so no one's ever asked me like any of these questions. So
welcome to the arena, Alex.
Yeah, what's going to happen to me after this is I'm going to reopen all these wounds and I'm going to be like, okay. So I went into it with like some surface level problems. Just, I was like, everyone around me was going in California, so I was like, I should probably go. And I went in with like a couple things I wanted to talk about. And once we got in there and she started doing the opening up, I would bring her something as little as like, okay, so me and this friend had this little squabble. And then the way she was able to take that and explain to me why I felt the way I felt about it, little anxieties, she could just break apart for me or help me identify why I felt the way I felt. My emotional intelligence, that not only would happen in that session, but she would give me a little toolkit that I could take with me outside of it. So I would just be on a Friday night with 4 friends and we'd be talking, and that same scenario would come up and I would want to maybe react one way, or I would feel some type of way. This will be big for girls because we're constantly in those modes when we're with other girls. And it's like, for me just to have the tools to be like, oh, Alex, the reason you feel this way about that is because of you. No big deal. And the reason she's saying that is because of this. Not a big deal. Like, my level of empathy and kindness just went up so much, and I was so much more calmer because I just understood the way I thought about things and other people thought about things. So to answer your second part, that was the first year or two. Once I moved to New York, I got a lot more problems in life. Also, I just got older and I was doing more. And so there's been periods of my life where it's raining, right? And then there's periods where it's not raining. And I always say, you know, when it's already raining, you want to have the umbrella up. And so therapy's been a way for me to constantly have the umbrella and when it's sunny or when it's raining. And I would say my level of problems this year have been, this is the big one for me. But it's nice because I'm already accustomed to therapy and I know how to work with my therapist. And it's like, you never know what life's going to throw at you. You tell me I'm going to have the year I had this year, I'd be like, no, I won't ever have that. And it's like so nice that I came in with this mental toughness kind of, and it's not toughness the way I grew up, it's toughness, the therapy kind of toughness. It's that emotional toughness.
Yeah, I love that, especially the beginning piece, because I was just in a therapy session the other day, and I've got a really good relationship with my therapist now, but we were just talking, and I've had like some spider. They were like, I just saw a spider, and I'm like, before, like a couple spiders right by my bed before I hopped into therapy, and I'm like, and so that was top of mind. So I'm like, we're just like catching up. I'm like, yeah, like I've been working on this. Like I know I have an irrational fear of spiders, like blah blah blah. And she dove into that a little bit. And next thing I knew, I swear, 30 minutes later, we're talking about me when I was like 6 years old, my childhood, and how I've developed like all these different fears, and not being enough and not feeling enough because of how I was raised or whatever it might be. And I'm like, how did we get from here, this fear to that? Like, you know, and it's crazy, but, and that's, you know, a year and a half into therapy. So I think, that was just a great point. It really resonated with me. So I have a question for you, Alex, and you may not have an answer to this, but what do you wish people knew about you that most don't? Or like, what is just like a misconception that you feel is out there about you?
I think there's 2 different people. Maybe I should work on this. But there's like the Alex Bennett, and then I think there's the Alex that co-hosts the Mean Girl pod. and then like if you actually listen to the podcast, I don't think you would think this about me. But if you watch the clips, I think you'd be like, well, those 2 aren't very smart. And Erica, our CEO, put it the best. She was like, the best part about it is like you guys are in on the joke, right? Like, but I would say that's a pretty big misconception is people are like, what a blonde airhead. And I've fought that battle my whole life. I love that too because I'm like perfect. You know, like undersell, over deliver, like that puts me in a really good position. But I think a lot of people think I'm a bit of a ditz. And I don't want to correct them, but I do think it's a misconception.
I was actually quite excited to have this conversation because I've only seen the short form content of the podcast. So I was like, I'm sure that that's not very accurate. So no, I would say that you're in the half hour here. You've done a great job of dispelling that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't have any sort of misconception coming in because I don't, maybe unlike a lot of the people that post comments, like I don't know you. I didn't know you coming in. So I'm not going to come in with any sort of, judgment, but I guess we're getting close here, but I want to ask a question on time. Like, where do you want to go? Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What's next for Alex? Like, where do you want to take your life?
Well, I always said Okay, I have to comment on the comment. I have to comment on the clips really quickly.
Please do.
Because I love that because I think so many people forget we have a hand in our clips. Like that's what grew us, right? And it's like this detachment from the internet saying, okay, put up the clip where we don't know if dinosaurs are real. Put it up there. Go get that 50 million views. You know what I mean? Like that's only good for business. And then you're kind of signing up to be like, no, you can say I'm an idiot.
And that's true to who you are, right? Like you're not just pretending to be someone you're not, right? Like when you these are just obviously they're short form clips, but the point being, I think what I'm trying to make and understand is like you're still being Alex Bennett through all this. Like you're not trying to put on a persona for views or whatever. You're still being authentic to yourself, and you obviously are making the most of the short form content to generate, like you said, what's best for business. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, no, I missed the chapter where we confirmed or denied about dinosaurs, but you kind of got to be like
Right.
a little self-deprecating about it. And no, I don't wash my hands every time I go to the bathroom. I don't think everyone does, but you kind of just have to be like, yeah, you can put that up, and then it. But yeah, no, we're really being ourselves. It's definitely not. It's not an act. But I love that. Like I love people that are like, I only see the clips. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, but I think it's good. Where I want to go in 5 years, I've stopped writing down exactly because what I found with Mean Girl Pod was if you asked me 6 months, if you asked me a week before that, where do you want to be in life? I would have said all these things, and a podcast co-host wasn't going to be on it. But that opportunity fell into my lap. So I say what I want to be in 5 years, or right now, is just prepared. Like I'm a big believer in you don't have to get ready if you stay ready type thing. So every day I like take care of my mental health. I take care of Alex. I show up. Like I'm a big like whatever we've agreed to, let's do it. Let's put ourselves in the best possible position to succeed. But I don't know exactly what success looks like. I'll just know it when the opportunity is in front of me, and I want to be prepared enough to take it and do really well at it, which is what I feel like I was with Mean Girl Pod. And now we have this really fun next chapter to go explore, and I'm like, I don't know what it is, but I want to give it everything I got. I know I'll do that, but I don't know where I want to end up.
So I want to dig into two types of relationships, your friendships, but also your relationship with your parents. As you've grown and evolved, a lot of people would say as you've grown your emotional intelligence, as you've grown your self-awareness and gone through like the therapy journey, your social circle might evolve or revise itself. You might have to trim certain people out that you're growing beyond, and also you're becoming viral and, more famous and picking up new ventures like the podcast. Like, how has your social circle evolved, and how have you been able to maybe maintain certain relationships versus also then, balancing that with making sure that the new relationships are still authentic and for the right reasons?
So I used to be 100 shiny pennies. I was friends with everyone, and my mom would always be like, girl, you have got to you trust everyone so quickly and it's gonna hurt you one day. Now that I'm here, and I think spiritual wellness or mental health is being okay at disappointing people. It's being good at disappointing people, actually, because you have to put yourself before them. So now I'm the 4 quarters kind of girl, and my social circle has gotten a lot smaller, and I love it that way because a lot of people have, when you put yourself out there, well, what comes with that? More opinions. And so I think I've learned, and moving, so I've got some friends from every stage. I've got some friends from Oklahoma, California, and then I've got this new phase. And this new phase is different because you meet people that are oftentimes online, and they say, sometimes never meet your heroes. And I think of Shannon Ford every time I say this because she was someone online who I really wanted to match her online personality in person, and she did, and we had an instant connection. And I think that's rare in this space, but it's so refreshing. So the way I do my friendships is I'm not quick to trust, but I think I get a lot more opportunities with social media to see how people operate. It's almost like a party. You know, somebody brings a gift if you're hosting, or they help you clean up, or they're nice to the wait staff. Like little instances like that where you get to see somebody's true character. You also get a lot of that online, and the way they act to your face versus the way that they'll portray you on social media. Like, you get to learn very quickly how somebody is. So there's a lot of good and bad to that. And so you find your people. And for my people back home, I learn who claps when I do well and who claps when I do bad, and that teaches you a lot. So my friends have gotten smaller but tighter, and I'm really thankful for them.
And how has your relationship with your parents evolved?
It's been, it's evolved. Because my dad's like, Insta tick what? And I'm like, it's TikTok and Instagram. And so he kind of just like laughs. And my mom's familiar with it because she got online when I got online. And so they're proud of me, and they're slightly confused. I always joke that they're kind of like, what are you doing? And I always say I'm a long way from home. So it's a different type of relationship with them, because it's not me being, home for dinner 3 nights a week with them. And so we talk about different things, and I think both sides, we've had to expand our minds, and it's been uncomfortable at times. But I'm really thankful and blessed to have a family that's as rock solid as mine, and so they've been there with me on that journey. But our relationship is totally different than when I lived in Oklahoma now. But I love it. They're proud of me, I'm proud of them, and so it's good.
And then what do you look for in terms of, as it relates to friendships? Like, who have you found that you connect best with? Like, is it someone that's just very authentic? Is it someone that's very kind? Through my self-healing journey, my journey of self-awareness and self-discovery, I feel like I'm very clear. It's very easy to tell when I connect with someone and someone gives me energy versus someone that kind of drains me of my energy. Like, who have you found through your kind of transformation that you just really connect with? Like, what type of person would you say? How would you describe them?
I connect with and I always say I want everybody to eat, but I don't want everybody to eat at my table. And the people I want to eat at my table are people that are authentically themselves, like unapologetically. And the reason that is because I can be emotionally porous. So if I'm around somebody that's real wild, I can get kind of wild. If I'm around people that are like, we're doing a Bible study, I'm like, I can Bible study with you too. Like, I could do, if we're talking therapy, I'm in. If we're not at all, I'm not, And so I need to be around people that are unapologetically themselves and so secure in who they are, because I think when you're yourself, you give people permission to be themselves too. And so those are my people, are the ones that know exactly who they are, and they don't care what anybody thinks. Like, that's my tribe. And that looks like a lot of different things. Moral wise, we need to have the same moral compass, but on top of that, like, I'll take whatever it is, just know who you are.
Yeah, no, that's beautifully said. Alex, we're going to wrap up here. I just wanted to thank you so much for sharing your story, being open and authentic. It really shined through to myself and MD. So we're going to sign off here, but thank you so much.
Guys, can I say something really quickly?
Please do.
Thank you for having me on. I've been a guest on a lot of podcasts, and it's not often that you sign off feeling like the way I do right now. It's just like safe, but also I think that conversation was really beautiful, and it'll help a lot of people. So I wanted to say thank you guys for what you do, because that's going to help a lot of people, and that's what the internet's about. There's a lot of bad out there, but with you guys around, it's a lot more good.
Thanks so much, Alex. That means a lot. You warmed my heart right there. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Alex.